In the previous segments, we looked at 3 strategies for making your chord changes more quickly. The first one was seeing if the 2 chords you're working with share a note in common, and then you can just leave that finger down as you make the switch. The second one was seeing if, even if they don't share a note in common, do they perhaps have the situation where one finger still remains on the same string as it goes from one chord to the next, allowing you to slide from one to the next. The third strategy we looked at was the idea of streamlining your movements, finding some kind of a connection from one chord to the next. Perhaps one finger moves over only by one string, or it moves only by one fret. Something like that. Use that as your first move, as your anchor point around which to build the second chord. The final strategy we'll look at in this series has to do with the bass note of the chord and getting it down first. First of all, a little definition. The bass note of a chord is the lowest sounding note that belongs in the chord. For instance, here on a G chord, my bass note is the G, the 3rd fret of the 6th string. The way the guitar is set up, most guitar techniques that you play, whether it be strumming or whether it be finger picking, begin with that lowest note of the chord, whatever that chord is. That lowest note will change as you change chords. For instance, when I go to a C chord, the bass note right now is the C. I skip over the 6th string altogether, strumming it and finger picking it. It's always the first thing that happens. Use that fact to your advantage in trying to make chord changes more quickly. For instance, with the C and the G. If I'm playing a strumming pattern and I'm going from C to G, I want to get my bass note of the G down first. I want to prioritize that because that's the first note I'm going to play. So I want to think about what finger in the C chord is headed for the bass note spot of the G chord, and it happens to be this guy right here. And I'm going to use that as my pivot point. Let's look at that again. Here's the C, strum, going for that G bass note. So even if the rest of my G chord were a millisecond late in getting into place, I can get started with the strum. I don't have to wait necessarily for everybody to be completely in place. So let's see if we can get from G back to C with the same idea. So the C bass note we said was the note C right here at the 5th string, 3rd fret. The finger that's headed for that position is this guy, the ring finger. So let me send that one over there first and use that as my pivot point. Back to the G, placing the bass note first, and to the C, placing the bass note first, and starting my strum even a millisecond before the other guys are in place. Bass note first. Bass note first. Let's finish off this segment on seamless chord changes with a little practice play-along chord progression that puts a few of these strategies into place at once. Let's do a chord progression that goes D, A, C, G. D, A, C, G. Here's our strategies. D to A, we've got a slider right there. D to A. A and C don't share much in common, so our priority will be putting the C bass note down first, which goes right here, and it'll be this finger. So here I'm at A, reaching for that C bass note, and put the rest of the C into place. C and G we've worked on as well with the same idea. Place that G bass note down first, figure out which finger is headed there. Let that one go first, put the rest of it together. We'll bring it back to D, and here we'll use the fact that in the D chord, this finger, the ring finger, in the G is on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, in the D goes to the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and we'll use that as a pivot point. So let's do 2 measures of each chord, just 4 quarter notes per measure. Starting with D, going to A. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sliding to A on your ring finger. Going to C, place bass note first. G, place bass note first. You're going to D next. Use your ring finger as the first move. A is next, slide down on your ring finger. C is next, place the bass note first. G is next, place the bass note first. Playing along with this exercise is a great way to develop this skill, because only if you're playing with some sort of a rhythm machine, a drummer, or another musician will you know really if you have a pause in between your chord changes. If I keep barreling along without you, you know you've got a pause in there that still needs to be worked out.